Hi, I'm Micah Halpern. Thank you for joining me today as I do some thinking out loud. Our first segment is called Background Briefing. The first thing I've been thinking about is democracy. And in the spirit of bipartisanship, building bridges, reaching across the aisle. These are, once they were ubiquitous expressions, have become relics of the past. Once upon a time, not too long ago, politicians realized the importance of working together. They even valued the importance of working together, not just realized it, they valued it. Those days, both in Israel and the United States, are for all intents and purposes gone. Those expressions need no explanation for anyone over the age of 30, let's say, for instance. But I'd be surprised if anyone under the age of 30 has ever heard those once bandied about common phrases. For the sake of their country, for the good of the people they pledge to represent, opposing political sides would agree to put their disagreements on policy and politics on hold. Often stimulated by an immediate national need, a crisis, or a national catastrophe, the spirit of bipartisanship would be launched. The goal was to achieve a greater good for the country they loved and the people whose trust and goodwill had placed them in office. If, even for a brief moment, differences were put aside, a common threat was dealt with, neutralized, or dissipated. Oh, how I long for those old days in the United States of America. While few and far between in Israel, thankfully, there are still some special moments when everyone unites. The good news is that national unity happens. The not good news is that national unity almost exclusively happens because there are issues of defense and or terror to be dealt with. And in Israel, like in the United States, it is politics that drives the wedge, not just between politicians, but between people, even friends, even family. And in the United States, like in Israel, election season has dawned. Governors, senators, members of Congress, reelected or replaced, snail-mailed boxes are filled with mass mailings of candidates' pictures and slogans. TV shows flooded with nasty political ads. Unlike in Israel, there is no designated time for these ads to appear during election season. They can pop up at any time on any network during any program. Try watching something on your phone or tablet, but first be prepared for candidates' ads interrupting your videos. And as the days to elections grow near, the number of ads pile up. Rather than presenting a positive picture of a candidate, the vast majority of ads spew rhetoric and point fingers. And that's because in Israel, like in America over the years, politics has moved into extremes, moved into far corners of party ideology. Really, extremes. Spanning that bipartisan bridge has become untenable. The bridge is too long and to be stable at all. The chasm beneath the bridge is too deep. The irony of all of it is that, over the years, I have watched the politicians retreat to the corners. I have not seen the voters move, not at all. The masses, certainly the undecided voters, and that's what I'm speaking about when I say the voters, those most likely to actually go out and vote tend to be centrist. Those centrist voters are neither moving themselves nor swayed or being swayed by the extremes. And without them, no election can be won. Not in the United States and not in Israel. It's the middle that does it all. It is the middle that elects a candidate, not the extremes. Elections results have been so close that to defeat the opponent, the candidate and parties need to woo swing voters to their side. That cannot be done with strident extremist points of view. Swaying a swing voter takes moderate arguments and nuanced platforms. It takes sincerity, not hyperbole. No moderate voter believes that the candidates, or candidates in general, are reincarnations of evil characters like Hitler. They don't believe that. Here is a perfect example. The United States suffered horribly in the wake of a devastating hurricane. Hurricane Ian was one of the worst, most destructive storms in the United States history. And yet, politicians proclaimed that if they were in charge, there would be no hurricanes as destructive as Ian. Well, do they really think that they're Poseidon, the god of the sea? Some actually do. Do they think that swing voters will be convinced that if they were in power, there would not be any natural disasters? They must think that way, or why would they make such foolish proclamations? Their disconnect from reality is beyond scary. To say that people, Israelis and Americans, are losing faith in parties and politics is to state the obvious. Those who continue to vote will continue to be divided into two groups. Either the die-hard supporters for their side, either on the extreme right or extreme left, for their party, or the moderates in the middle, who, despite it all, still yearn for an era of bipartisanship. Democracy is all about elections and swaying the middle. Coming up next, Points of View. First up is a column from Ynet. It was posted on October 12th, 2022. It was written by Tzipi Shmulevitz. The title is Kanye West Proves Anti-Semitism Has Now Become Mainstream. Opinion and subtitle, The Problem with the Post-Trump U.S. is that it has become a breeding ground for bigots who now express their opinions, not fearing repercussions, and even gaining massive support in the process, even among Jews. Both the op-eds that I'm going to deal with today will be discussing this entertainer, Kanye West, Ye as he's called. Today, at least he calls himself that, who tweeted that he was going to go DEFCON 3 on the Jewish people. It should be clear that this was hateful language against Jews. His context shows it. His words, even though misspoken, show it. The military expression Ye was using is actually DEFCON, not, as he put it, DEFCON. Almost everyone thought Ye's was negative, aggressive speech, not defensive, as it is in the military context. West has not been being too complimentary to Jews in general. Here's what Shmulevitz's take. Yes, Kanye West is a famous rapper, fashion designer, and self-proclaimed genius. He has millions of fans, and any one of them can at any moment decide to follow his advice. Go DEFCON 3, buy a gun and settle the score with the Jewish people, for him. But if we were to look at the big picture, Kanye, who now goes simply by Ye, is irrelevant. Other than music and maybe fashion, Kanye doesn't really know anything about anything. He's definitely not the free and independent thinker he believes he is. It's funny, but somehow all these free and independent minds always end up being exposed as racist, anti-Semites, homophobes, or fans of medieval type of patriarchy. Shmulevitz now moves on to explain that West is a bigot in so many different ways, she writes. West's journey down this rabbit hole began long before he allegedly was diagnosed with bipolar disorder. Former U.S. President Barack Obama called him back in 2009, when people hailed him as the new Malcolm X. And, as it sometimes happens to those who leaped from poverty to wealth in America, Kanye also appears to hate those with a similar background as him who have succeeded. In short, Kanye West and his ignorance are not important here. What's important is the freedom with which West's threatening Jews in a Twitter post, the confidence of being an anti-Semite, racist, homophobe, and embracing fascism publicly. That's what's problematic, not Kanye specifically. Shmulevitz explains that former President Trump did not create this situation, but he did permit these bigots to emerge. She fears that many Jews and most of Israel subscribe to the same bigotry. She writes that there is a movement underway that she, as she puts it, a cabal of international elites control the media, Hollywood, academia, and of course, the banks. Its main goal is to destroy Western civilization and reinvent the culture. It's pretty clear why this movement attracts so many anti-Semites. What we need to worry about is the amount of Jews who have jumped on this bigoted bandwagon. Israel likes to criticize anti-Zionists and sometimes anti-Semitic sentiments, which ring out across American campuses, because it's a problem that is driven by the left wing of the political spectrum. But in reality, it's a small-scale phenomenon involving a minuscule number of people who have no effect. In the meantime, anti-Semitic views on the right are sometimes expressed through synagogue massacres, while far-right representatives run for Congress and use the American media, which refuses to see what's happening right under their nose. Trumpism enjoys a lot of support from a large percentage of Jews in Israel and some 25% of American Jewry. They know their history, but they have learned to rationalize anti-Semitism because they agree with the rest of the poisonous views of the movement which is spreading, and because they are certain it won't affect them. This too, of course, is a fairly well-known phenomenon in history, and it's growing constantly. And that's what's important here, not Kanye West. Shmulevitz uses Kanye West's rant as a tool to show the Jewish world, especially Israel, spends too much time chasing Jew hatred from the elites in Hollywood. She's asserting that the political right is far more dangerous when it comes to bigotry. Hers is a very interesting thesis and worth thinking about. Next up is an editorial from the Jerusalem Post. It's entitled, "Why Kanye West Shouldn't Be Left Off the Hook for Anti-Semitism." Editorial subtitled, "Letting Kanye West Off the Hook by Calling His Post Misguided or a Misunderstanding is Paving the Way for More Anti-Semitism to Rear Its Ugly Head." Now remember, this is an editorial, so it's unsigned, and it's by the editorial board. They sit together and have these ideas, and then someone puts them to pen to paper. This is how the editorial begins. Kanye West, one of the world's most popular entertainers, is also one of its most unstable. He also appears to be harboring an anti-Semitic streak. In a series of social media posts over the last few days that resulted in both his Instagram and Twitter accounts being suspended, the singer, who has adopted the name Ye, lashed out at Jews using classic anti-Semitic tropes. First, late last week, he suggested on Instagram that Sean Combs, the rapper known as Diddy, was being controlled by Jewish people. Then 2 days later, he tweeted that he would soon go DEFCON 3 on Jewish people, an apparent reference to the United States Defense Readiness Condition known as DEFCON. Referring to Jews, he wrote, "You guys have toyed with me and tried to blackball anyone who ever opposes your agenda," in a tweet that was later removed. In a separate tweet, West accused Mark Zuckerberg, the Jewish chief executive of Meta, which owns Instagram, as removing him from Instagram. The editorial then quotes Jewish entertainers Jamie Lee Curtis and Sarah Silverman. Silverman asks why only Jews speak out against Jew hatred. The editorial continues. Actress Jamie Lee Curtis tweeted, "The holiest day in Judaism was last week. Words matter. A threat to Jewish people ended once in genocide. Your words hurt and incite violence. You are a father. Please stop." The next day, appearing on the Today Show in the United States, Curtis said, "I woke and burst into tears. DEFCON 3 on Jewish people? What are you doing? It's bad enough that fascism is on the rise around the world, but on Twitter, on a portal, to pour that in as if Jewish people haven't had it hard enough." Jewish actress and comedian Sarah Silverman sharpened the criticism and got closer to the crux of the problem in a statement on Twitter. Kanye threatened the Jews yesterday on Twitter, and it's not even trending. Why do mostly only Jews speak up against Jewish hate? "The silence is so loud," she said. The editorial concludes this way. As the Holocaust Museum of Los Angeles wrote after inviting West to visit, "Words matter, and words have consequences. Yea, the Holocaust started with only words that sadly begat stereotypes, racial and religious tropes, and blaming others, and led to the murder of 6 million Jews. West's words must not be allowed to pass quietly. Simply ignoring them is not an option. As Curtis said, if we aren't reacting, who are we? What does it say about people who aren't reacting?" The editors are 100% correct. We need to react to this. We need to stand up and say something. Enough. Coming up, commentary through cartoons where pictures tell the story. I'm going to show you 6 cartoons and memes today. The first meme is very funny. It makes fun of the news and the bias. the bias that the news has in our warped media. It reads, quote, "So hold on a second. They have legit fact checkers that know all the facts? Why not set up a channel on TV and just give us the facts? We'll call it the news." Next up is a fun interpretation of trail mix. For all of us with a sweet tooth, this is a perfect explanation of the popular snack food trail mix. Trail mix. Oh, you mean M&Ms with obstacles. I like that one. This next meme is Gene Wilder and his character Willy Wonka. This is Gene Wilder in the original movie Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory. Of course, his character is synonymous with sweets and treats. And the meme, the character asks the following question. If vegetables are so good, why do vegans always try to make them taste like meat? I've asked that many times, believe me. Next up is a headline from Axios. I have mentioned this problem before, and it's going to get even worse. For some people, it's very troubling. For others, it's not a cause of concern at all. You be the judge for yourselves. We'll talk more about this in the Picante piece at the end. The headline reads, U.S. beer shortages looms with gap in carbon dioxide supply. I'll explain more about carbon dioxide in our Picante section. Next up is a great line. It reads, it was the best of shires, and it was the Worcestershire. This last meme is just funny. It's the Three Stooges playing football. The caption reads, I'm going to tell my kids these are the Dallas Cowboys. The Three Stooges, of course, Moe, Larry, and Curly, revolutionized TV comedy. Revolutionized TV comedy. I can't say it again or enough. In a moment, more of my own perspective and a few predictions. The United States has officially let it be known that they are reviving the 2015 nuclear deal is not the focus right now. Asked if the United States was interested in pursuing talks to revive the pact under which Iran curbed its nuclear program in return for economic sanctions relief, State Department spokesman Ned Price replied, it is very clear, and the Iranians have made very clear, that this is not a deal that they have been prepared to make. The deal certainly does not appear imminent. This is good news and a relief to level-headed people like myself who've been worried that the United States was pushing Iran and the West into a new nuclear deal with Iran. This is a big relief. At the same time, the United States continued to clamp down on Iran and is now imposing sanctions on companies that are helping Iran. The United States imposed sanctions on several Chinese and Indian companies accused of involvement in Iran's petrochemical and petroleum trade. This is critical and very, very important for us to understand. By way of these sanctions, the United States is putting pressure on Tehran as it seeks to revive the 2015 deal. In the statement released by his office, the United States Secretary of State, Antony Blinken, explained that Washington designated two Chinese-based companies, Zhonggu Storage and Transportation Company Limited and WS Shipping Company Limited, for their roles in a scheme that attempts to thwart sanctions on the sale of Iranian petroleum and petrochemical products. Blinken accused Zhonggu of operating a commercial crude oil storage facility for Iranian petroleum. He accused WS Shipping of being the ship manager for a vessel that has transported Iranian petroleum products. We will see what happens next. But the United States is starting to clamp down on bigger fish now. That's Iran, China, and India. I've been writing about and explaining growing internal tensions in Iran for a long time. And this is another example of what's happening inside Iran. The Kurdish underground is very tight and well organized, and they are attacking Iranian targets. Iranian state-linked media has reported that up to 19 people, including a commander in the paramilitary Revolutionary Guard, were killed in an attack by armed separatists on a police base in eastern Zahedan, which is the eastern part of Iran. The reports did not explain if the attack was conducted by the Kurdish underground or if they were part of anti-government protests sparked after the death of a woman who was not properly wearing her hijab, her head covering. This deadly attack took place early in the day as crowds gathered at a nearby mosque for Friday prayers. The Iranians claim that they have arrested 9 foreigners linked to the anti-government protests, which authorities have blamed on hostile foreign entities, without providing any evidence that this was the case, or that they even arrested the right people. The state-run IRNA news agency cited witnesses as saying that 19 people were killed and 15 were wounded, but there was no official confirmation of any of these events. The Jerusalem District Court recently ruled that a young Iranian woman was innocent of any intent to harm Israeli security. The Iranian-Israeli woman and 3 Israeli women of Iranian descent were charged with contact with a foreign agent. The women were approached on social media by a man claiming to be a member of the Iranian Jewish community. He was, in fact, an agent of the Iranian intelligence services. This is an important case. It highlights the difference between Israeli and other countries regarding security in general. These women were not complicit in any wrongdoing. They were duped. They had no intent to harm Israel, and they provided no real information to the Iranian agent, even if they were duped into being a friend on social media. They had no information to share, no intel to share. It was truly just social media contact. As popular as it is, soccer can be very dangerous. In the past, there have been horrific stories of mass deaths because of stampedes at soccer stadiums, and it happened again. In Indonesia, panic and chaos ensued as people rushed for the exits after police fired tear gas during an Indonesian soccer game. The police were trying to control the unruly crowd, spurred by the fans of the defeated team, but their efforts backfired. At least 174 people died, most of whom were trampled upon or suffocated because they were caught underneath the feet of those running out, making it one of the worst and deadliest sports events in the world. Attention immediately focused on the police's use of tear gas, which is banned at soccer stadiums by FIFA, which is the International Soccer Association. Now, the president of World Soccer Body called the deaths at the stadium a dark day for all involved in football and a tragedy beyond comprehension. Joko Widodo, president of the Republic of Indonesia, ordered an investigation of security procedures. Libya's Missing Person Authority announced that they have discovered 42 bodies buried in a mass grave in the central coastal city of Sirte. This city was a former stronghold of the ousted ISIS, the Islamic State group. In a statement, the authorities' spokesperson said the 42 bodies have been exhumed from a school site in the city following a tip from an investigation conducted with captured ISIS members. Sirte is the birthplace of the former longtime dictator Muammar Gaddafi. The city fell under ISIS, or Islamic State, control between 2015 and 2016. In classic ISIS style, they chose to control the city of Sirte in order to profit from the chaos that engulfed the oil-rich nation of Libya following the chaos of the 2011 revolution there. It's just very sad. The New York Times reported that Israel is providing Ukraine with basic intelligence about Iranian drones, which Russia has begun to use against Ukraine. Moscow has been deploying Iranian-made Shahed 136 suicide drones in their move to control Ukraine. A Ukrainian source told the newspaper that Israel was sharing the intelligence. The official also said that a private Israeli firm was also giving Ukraine satellite imagery of Russian troop positions. Ukrainian President Vladimir Zelensky has said that Russia used the drones during the recent bombing of civilian targets in major cities. The United Nations estimated that the simultaneous aerial attacks left at least 11 civilians dead in Ukraine and more than 100 wounded. According to the president, Ukrainian intelligence believes that Russia ordered 2,400 Shahed 136 drones from Iran. That's a lot of drones. Despite the help that Jerusalem is providing the Ukrainians, humanitarian aid, military aid, Ukraine continues to be critical of the Jewish state for not providing more defensive weapons and equipment, a point repeatedly made by Ukraine's ambassador to Israel as well as by President Zelensky. Israel has long wanted to bring the remaining Ethiopian Jews to safety to Israel. Recently, reports have been published indicating that Israel has begun that process and that flights are bringing thousands of remaining Ethiopian Jews to the Jewish homeland, to Israel. Each of the newly arriving Ethiopians has family already living in Israel. The timing of these trips is crucial. The move comes as war escalates once again in the Tigray region of Ethiopia. This is an important step in saving the lives of thousands of Ethiopian Jews and in reuniting families that have been separated for years. Bruchim habayim, welcome to these new Israelis. We've been thinking out loud about a lot today. Now that you know what I've been thinking, let me know what you're thinking. Email me at micah@jbstv.org. Tweet me at Micah Halpern. Tell me what you think. Before we end, let me leave you with one piquante piece of information. Do you know how carbon dioxide, or CO2, is made? It's a byproduct. It's the result of burning fires. The reason we have CO2 detectors in our homes is that carbon dioxide is colorless and odorless, and as a result, it's deadly. If a fire should break out, more people actually die from CO2 than the fire itself. Most efficient way of making or producing carbon dioxide is from ammonia. Ammonia is an inorganic chemical used in household cleaning products, plastic production, and a lot more. But the majority of ammonia is used in farming. About 80% of the ammonia produced around the world is used as plant fertilizer. We produce ammonia by burning natural gas to separate the carbon and the hydrogen atoms. Hydrogen is then combined with nitrogen to create the ammonia. The carbon atoms can then be combined with oxygen to create CO2 as a byproduct. CO2 can then be sold to the industries that need it. The gas is filled in cylinders and it's sold to all that need. Thank you for thinking out loud with me, Micah Halpern. Let's think out loud again next week on JBS.